All right, well, it says recording, so we're off.
All right, let's do this. So, guys, welcome to part two. At noontime Eastern, we talked about three critical errors in branding that you know people, companies, firms, just anybody can make, and then some solutions and some best practices as well. And just a quick rehash: the three things that people do just absolutely wrong is they brand what I, as a business, want to do versus what you, as my consumer, want me to do. And the second one is I brand what I do, not necessarily the job I get done. As a consumer, they're looking for something to hire, otherwise they do it themselves. And so they don't really care necessarily how it's done as much as that the result they're looking for. Sometimes they're the same, other times they're different. So it's important to keep that consumer perspective. And the third thing that is a critical mistake that we talked about is everybody trying to brand a certain shelf space. So like top shelf or mid shelf or bottom shelf. And our example was a Rolex. Not everybody can be a Rolex. Sometimes you're a Timex, and sometimes that's okay. In fact, a lot of times that's okay. So those are the critical problems. And Gene, if you don't mind covering some of the things that companies can do to right that wrong.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we covered is a strategy. You need to have a strategy for branding. You can't just go off the cuff. You need to plan short term and long term, and you need to stick with it. And by sticking with it, you got to collect data. You can't just assume, and you can't go by gut feeling. Gut feeling is a good place to start, sure, because it is your branding campaign, and it needs to be your vision and what you want your company to put out there. But you need to collect data points along the way, and then perfect that with that data collection. And I believe we talked about a couple more, Ben. Do you remember those?
Yeah, so following the data that you collect would be having flexible strategies. It's very easy to get locked into, okay, this is going to be my brand because that's my vision statement, that's my mission statement, it aligns perfectly. But there's many brands out there that have changed entirely. They started out in one part of an industry, and sometimes there's actually a lot of examples of companies that have ended up totally different, from say, starting out in material goods and then ending up in tech. And we also talked about, it's okay to fast follow, but not necessarily to copy. Some companies have a great marketing strategy and it's working on you because you're their audience, but it may not be the best case for you to just completely adopt that, because that strategy works for that company, works for them, but it may not work for your brand and your company. So we wanted part two to be kind of where do we start now? So we know what can be done right. We know what can be done wrong, but where do we start? What's the foundations of branding? Gene, do you want to open on any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think to me, comes down to three things, or at least three categories. I think you have to have creativity. It's three C's. I like to keep things simple. And so three C's: creativity, connectivity, and probably the most important one is consistency. And if you have an issue, or if you have difficulty in one of the three C's, your overall branding campaign suffers. If you have difficulty with more than one, it's exponential. And especially the last one, consistency, right? You can have the best campaign in the world, or best strategy for branding, but if you're not sticking with it, if you're constantly changing it, which is part of consistency, right? If you're presenting a different brand or different visuals for your customers, then they get confused, and you can't have that. And same thing with connectivity. So that's not necessarily just being being online. That means connecting with your target audience. You have to know who you're targeting with your branding, and connecting with them. Don't just throw things at them. Communicate with them. Talk to them. Have a back and forth. Build that relationship versus just trying to sell them constantly. And then creativity. Make things unique. See what other people are doing. See what similar people in your world, i.e., your business, are doing, and then see if you can tweak it a little bit, make it more interesting, make it humorous, or just make it completely different than what somebody else is doing, but still within what your company culture is and what you're really trying to tell within maybe a story. What about you, Ben?
Well, that story point is interesting because it it pings to me one of the key things right now in contemporary marketing, which is an emotional connection, right? Everything now is a story. We have to have a relationship, and that relationship has to mean something more than just buyer seller. And coming up with, I think it was a podcast we did together, with an irrational connection, an irrational motivation for your consumer base to be loyal to your brand is one of the goals to have. And I think, there's a lot of irrational things that we do every single day. And I think if we break it down to just the basic ways humans connect with each other and interact with each other, it's not always just about, the foundational price, product, place, and promotion. Sometimes there has to be a little bit of fun involved. I think some of the more recent marketing, campaigns out there and the strategies just based on fun alone has been wonderful. And I think we could use a little bit of that in healthcare, because I think healthcare is still down in sick care. But what if we can actually bring it back to something, fun, life, not so much, get me out of the hospital. But
personable, right? Because especially in healthcare, so much branding goes into what you do, right? We do this, we offer this. This is how we do things. And everybody does that. That's the common expectations. Most people don't give a shit about what you do. Most people have no idea what that means about what you do, right? They come to see you because of how they feel and what they want to feel from coming to see you. So you need to make that connection. You need to let people know this is how we're going to help you feel, not what we're going to do to help you feel that way. And it's the same thing. And I would hear it all the time when I was in the clinic. You'd start explaining something to somebody like, oh, that's great. Just make me feel better. And that's essentially what it comes out to. You want to feel better. Same thing with, as a consumer, you always want to feel better. You want to go see a movie because you like how that movie makes you feel because of the story that movie tells. If you don't like the movie, after you leave, you feel like, you have buyer's remorse and you leave a bad review. Pretty much, right? That's exactly it. But that's the whole thing with stories. Yeah, that's why Hollywood's a multi-billion-dollar industry, because of the stories. Even terrible stories you want to watch just to see how terrible it is because of human curiosity. So not every story is a good story. Not just by telling a story doesn't mean you're going to be successful or you're going to have a good brand. But it's crafting a story that here's a buzzword coming at you that's authentic. So it's figuring out what authentic means to you and using that voice when you tell that story, and then keeping that voice throughout your branding strategy.
Sounds like it's a lot about the how too. Like the rest of the what doesn't seem to matter so much. It's the who and the how. How does who and how connect? And that seems to be where that is the laser focus point of energy in a strong brand, is when you can connect your audience with how this is going to relate to them. Like when Disney does all their branding initiatives, it's all about the memories, or it's about the families, about, being a kid again. A lot of that's feelings, and it's how they're going to do that job of making you feel like a kid again. And I think a lot of businesses, even if it's it could be a very material based business, say in distributions, I could make a customer feel very confident that something's going to end up at their front door the next day. And that is a great feeling. Amazon has done a very good job of that. So
yeah, and that's the trick. It's how do you sell feeling? How do you create that emotional connection with somebody? And that's really, really tough. That's a hard thing to do, and that takes time because with the way social media is now, with how we're all hyper connected, we see so many things constantly in front of our faces. And even if I see something interesting on Twitter or Facebook, a lot of times I just scroll by and go, oh, yeah, I'll check it out later, and I forget about it. So it's creating that connection, but again, being consistent with it, showing somebody, I can't remember what the stat is. I think it's like 10 to 15 times something has to go by somebody's face before they click on it or remember it or something like that. So it's tough. It is, but that's why you kind of have to be creative with it, be interesting, but also know that not everyone's gonna want to see what you're showing. Not everyone is interested in your brand, and then you have to focus your energies again on that target audience and knowing who you're going to be branding towards, not just throwing a wide net and hoping for the best.
And that goes to the 80-20 principle that we've talked about on UpDoc Media, where you don't need to own 80% of the market. What you need to own is 20% of the market and keep 80% of them. Because there's so much. It's repeatedly been shown in all sorts of industries that 80% of your profits and revenues are going to come from 20% of your consumers, and so those 20% are the ones that you're going to have to target specifically. You might have to segment that out, and you might have to take some very painstaking efforts to directly relate with them, connect with them, interact with them, check on them, to make sure that relationship is still valued. It's so easy to just send out flyers everywhere, all over different zip codes. But how much of that really connects with people versus, if you're a small mom and pop shop, a handwritten note that can be very powerful across any industry. So
it is very powerful. It's an incredibly powerful technique because it's unique and it is creative. It's kind of that old school connection between people that gets lost so many times. And so let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about some actionable stuff. We've conceptualized a lot of the branding principles. So let's give the people listening a few things to actually try. And that's one of them. So when somebody buys an ARC, for example, on our website, and I have my business cards, right? And on the back of the business card, I kept it blank for a reason. And I write a little thank you on every single business card that I send an ARC with from my website. Other ones from our distributors, obviously I can't do that for selling 800 a week or something. I can't write 800 notes, but for the ones that went to our website that actually took that time, they get a little personalized, hey, thanks for your purchase. Thanks for being a customer. Feel free to reach out, something like that. My email's on the card, and it's a personal connection. It's my handwriting. It's their name. It's not generic, Mary, thanks for buying an ARC. Really appreciate you supporting us. Best G, something like that on the card. And I've had tremendous amount of emails from that just saying that was really cool. Just simple things like that. So that's definitely one of my favorite things to do. And that translates to any industry, whether you're a clinician, just writing a thank you note to one of your patients, or even the best thing is, keeping track of some stuff that if you have patients that you're, having consistent things or big events coming up, sending a birthday card for their daughter's birthday or a wedding or something like that. I mean, that kind of stuff, just one simple gesture of humanity, of kindness, goes a long, long way. And it's a good thing beyond just trying to sell somebody. It's a nice thing. It's a nice piece of goodwill for everyone involved. What about you, Ben? Any actionables?
Yeah, I mean, goodwill is huge, and I'd like to build on that. One of my favorite things. I mean, we both come from a healthcare background, but this permeates all industries. I love customer-driven stories. And specifically in healthcare, I love the ones that they get to tell that story of where they were and how they felt throughout their care, and how they felt afterward, and even after that. One of my favorite stories is where there's a PT that actually helped diagnose a rare type of stroke, but eventually, because of the connection that PT and the family made, they ended up becoming very long-term friends, coming back to town and taking each other out to dinner. And then that was that eventually turned into a kind of a driving story, a continual story of becoming part of each other's lives. And I think that aspect of branding is where I think most companies need to start looking at a little bit more, I guess, both critically and creatively. It's not enough just to be a good product anymore, and it's not good enough just to be in a good space, in a good shelf space, or to own a share of mine. If you think fast food, you think a certain brand. What you really need is you need to be a part of somebody's lives in a meaningful way, in an emotional way, and so these customer driven stories, whether they're pictures, videos that you show on social media, if you have the budget to push that out, through the radio or through other formal media, those stories, whether they're raw or they're edited and produced, are truly, truly powerful, because it's not the supplier of the service or the product saying, hey, look, we did this great job. It's somebody whose life was actually changed and made better, or perhaps saved, because of this one brand or this one industry or this one company. And it's the customer that's saying so. It's so much better than a laundry list of high recommendations, or 3.5, 4.5, 5 stars on a website. You get a tangible story. And if that story relates with you while you're watching it, now you're part of that same emotional construct. So consumer-driven stories they're wonderful, and they don't take very long. You can do it through Vine, 6 seconds.
Yeah, and it's the connection. It builds that connection. What we talked about, one of those C's. It helps people remember you, and that's the whole point of branding. Is so when somebody sees something that's similar to you, even colors. That's why every single big brand maintains consistency. So if you're a clinic, if you're a small business, if you maintain that consistency with your colors, with your image, with your story, when somebody sees similar colors, the point is they think of you. Right? When you think green, Starbucks wants you to think of them, things like that. So it's maintaining that same consistency throughout, and being consistent with your branding in terms of how you push it out on social media, whatever avenue you take, which, and most people that are listening to this, I'm guessing, are on social media, because that'd be kind of weird if you're on Blab and nowhere else. Right? But that's huge. It's maintaining that consistency, and don't confuse the hell out of people.
All right, so consistency, be relatable, connect with people authentically. Don't just push or sell products. You're looking to create a deeper connectivity with people's lives and the way they feel day to day, so that when they see something, when they need something, their thought is your brand. And that's kind of the pinnacle of it.
It really is. I mean, the point of branding is to tell your story through advertising, and that's the part of marketing, is to make connections through avenues, so that people have an ingrained piece of your story, i.e., your company, in their brains. And it's kind of like you said, it's the why is important. Absolutely. Simon Sinek did a great job of conceptualizing the why. And a lot of people focus on that, myself included. I think it's a great base. And I think a lot of people have been thinking that way for a long time. It's just he helped put it together. But you can't just have a why. The why by itself is all concept. It's just, it's a start. You need to have a why and a how. You put those together, that's when you really have a strategy and a plan, and why you have it. Just having something is never enough. Just knowing why you have something is never enough. Putting those two things together, that's when it's powerful.
All right. So if you're listening, you're watching this, whether it's live or on replay, make sure you have a story. Make sure it connects with people. Don't focus on necessarily, the process, but focus on the feeling during and after, and how people remember it. Connect your why and their why, and connect mutually your how. And when you do that, you'll have some actionables that will naturally sprout up for your businesses, where you can find even little tiny things, like Gene was saying, just a little handwritten thank you on a business card, a little, like a hope the wedding went well, or happy anniversary or happy birthday. Little things that show that you are part of people's lives are going to maintain and really nurture that connection, and it's going to sprout throughout, because people are going to say, hey, look, I got this card. Somebody that I didn't expect that snail mail. So
everyone still loves getting mail, because everyone expects bills at this point. And when you get mail, you're like, oh shit, got another bill, or junk mail or something like that. So when you get something that's actually not what you're expecting, I mean, just think about it. When you go check the mail, it's either junk, bills, or more junk. So or an invite to a wedding, or a birthday party, or a birth announcement, or something like that. Those things, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's different. It's a break in dichotomy from your day, and you remember that because You don't expect it. So that's always nice to have.
I think part of people's lives, part of people's days.
Exactly.
All
Part
right.
of the
Well,
day.
I think that's it for the part 2 tonight. Any closing thoughts you want, Gene, to share?
I think that's good. I think one of the big things we talked about from the first part as well is concepts are great, perfecting it, researching, all that stuff is great, but at some point you just got to launch. Failure to launch is one of the biggest branding blunders you can have. So it doesn't matter how good it is. If your strategy is always on paper and you're never doing it, you failed. Simple as that. Do it. It's better to fail after doing it and learn. Just another data point. They're all data points, and then you just keep tweaking it over time, and it gets better and better, hopefully.
All right, guys. So that's branding errors, how to fix them, and some foundational branding principles and how to act on them. Part 2. Hope you enjoyed it. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun. If you want more, check us out on updocmedia.com for our blog and podcast and much more of this kind of stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll pump out some more stuff